Hello and welcome everyone to today's ResNexus webinar. 5 must-know strategies about hospitality payments with Stripe. Today I am joined by James Lemon, the Global Head of Hospitality and Travel at Stripe, and he will present for us for a period of time, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end where you can ask all your questions. That will also be sort of hosted by Anna Walsh, the Partnership Lead at Stripe, and she'll help out with that as well. All right, and with that being said, I'm just going to go ahead and let James take it away. Thanks so much for coming on and presenting for us today.
Thanks, Gavin. Big thanks to the ResNexus team for inviting us along today. So we're going to take some time and talk a little bit about the wide world of payments, everything from kind of driving growth to managing chargebacks, staying compliant. So it's a wide ranging of topics, but ResNexus and Stripe are embarking on ambitious new partnerships together that's designed to help you run your business, drive growth, be more compliant, be more productive. And so we just kind of want to walk through some of the highlights of that. Before I get started, I guess, definitely need to introduce Stripe and introduce myself. Stripe, for those that you don't know, are a large global finance infrastructure or payments business. So we support millions of businesses around the world, from the very large enterprises and technology platforms down to entrepreneurs and startups. We process around $1 trillion of volume each year. We have about 8,000 employees, of which about half of which are actually directly involved in engineering and building the future of payments. So no wonder we work with many of the leaders in hospitality, including the likes of Airbnb, Marriott, Accor, all the way down to the smallest and most nimble kind of hotel, campsite, vacation rental organization. So delighted to be here. Personally, myself, I joined the business about 3 years ago to lead our efforts in the hospitality, travel, and leisure sector. Before that, I've spent about 20 years in the industry at IHG Hotels and Resorts, at Travelport, and then in 4 years in the world of entrepreneurship. So I was COO of a large home sharing vacation rental business in Europe, and then I set up my own hospitality and travel digital mentoring platform and strategy and advisory services for the industry. Outside of work, I am a father of two, and I'm a big lover of wine, trying to maybe make an excuse for my drinking of it by getting into the education of it, and that also feeds my travel addiction. So we tend to do family holidays in and around vineyard areas. This summer was Rioja, last year was Tuscany in northern Italy. So would be delighted to return and do a webinar on that one day. But for now, we are talking all things payments. So as I mentioned, kind of 5 real topics we're going to be walking through. Section 1 is really about how modern payment options can help you grow your direct revenues and boost your bookings. Section 2 is about maximizing spend beyond the core bedroom and thinking about kind of pre-arrival, checkout, and obviously on-property ancillaries. Part 3 is really around kind of keeping your business safe. What are some of the smart approaches to payment security? Section 4 is really around managing chargebacks. And Section 5 is around broader compliance, touching on things like PTI compliance and GDPR, and just how kind of payments plays a role in keeping that safe and secure and helping you manage your own business. And some of the things ResNexus and Stripe are doing together to support that. So let's get into boosting your bookings. How can you think about payments as a driver of new revenues for your business? Some things to think about here is the rise of digital wallets and contactless payments like Apple Pay and Google Pay. Something that ResNexus and Stripe will be exploring next year is the introduction of paying in installments, helping your leisure travelers through that manage their household budgets with buy now and pay later options, and how they can uplift conversion too. Thinking about international guests you might be wanting to attract and how local payment methods in your checkout can make a big difference there. And then touching on the importance of mobile-friendly payment processes and actually how card payments are still very important, and how we can help you manage a kind of modern checkout experience. So it may surprise those of us that live in the US and in Europe, where cards are something which we live with every day, and in the world of e-commerce, something we use every day. But really interestingly, around the world, cards are not the majority way that people pay for things online. Increasingly, we're seeing this explosion in digital wallets. Bank payments are becoming more and more common, especially you might have already tried it yourself for larger purchases. Actually, it's a great way to keep costs down. And then, of course, these local payments and cash can sometimes play a part in different economies of the world. So it's a really interesting time to be thinking about that online checkout and how to keep it high converting for yourself and for your customers. Wallets have really risen in popularity, and it's really no surprise. It's 3 times faster to use a wallet like Apple Pay or Google Pay than it is to fill out your name, address, and of course your card number. And so now 40%, so around 2/5 of all consumers globally have got wallets switched on their devices and laptops. So it's a really, really popular way for people to pay across the e-commerce landscape. But amazingly, you almost never see this in hotels. So that's something we're really trying to change. Around 90% of checkouts we've looked at don't support Apple Pay, and just behind, almost 90% don't support Google Pay. So I think there's a really bit of low-hanging fruit, let's say, to drive conversion. The key takeaway is that those hotels that don't switch it on, you risk losing customers to those OTAs and third-party channels that have this embedded. Second thing I want to talk about is the rise of buy now, pay later services. The stats are really explosive in Europe, but we are seeing very similar stats in the US as well. European customers are much more likely to complete a purchase if they see a buy now, pay later option that they recognize. So Affirm is probably a little bit bigger in the US, and Klarna probably a little bit bigger in Europe, but these are two big global brands who are helping customers pay in installments, interest-free for the customers themselves, and they actually manage a lot of that risk and all of that collection. Those customers that are turning on are seeing a big jump in conversion. You're more likely by about an order of 25% to see people check out rather than abandon. But most interestingly, actually, is some of the new data coming around increased average order value. So if you have a property where you have more of a premium package, let's say a suite or a larger site, we've seen the actual kind of basket size, if you like, can increase by about 14.5% on average. But the data we're getting from Klarna in hotels is that customers are willing to spend almost 50% more if they are checking out with a Klarna product because they are treating themselves to a kind of more premium stay. And interestingly, these buy now pay later themselves have a big following, and they have their own online shopping malls. So actually, they kind of come with their own consumer bases. And if you position the brand correctly on your website, you could be driving whole new customers to your business as well. Something you may not be so familiar with is the idea of local payment methods, but from France and Germany to obviously Mexico, Brazil, customers are being shown very popular local payment methods that are again helping drive conversion. We're seeing around of those customers, which can be anything from 25% for something like local Italian methods to as far high as kind of 90% for something like Ideal in the Netherlands. Around 90% of customers who use these payment methods say actually if they weren't available, they probably wouldn't book. So for those of you that are thinking about appealing to international travelers, thinking about turning on some of these local payment methods, I think could be really interesting. But I just want to finish this section to say, look, I think cards will remain the most important, payment method, in the US and in many countries around the world. But actually, just getting card payments right is incredibly complicated things to do. And one of the things that we're really excited about at Stripe is we've got a huge engineering team and that are helping with hundreds of small dynamic decisions and hundreds of optimizations just to make that user experience, well designed, thoughtful, beautiful, and just make it easier and easier for customers to complete your checkout, which really is at the end of the day what this is all about. So we'd love to share more with you on it, but I think there's some really interesting things to help you as a merchant just provide a really modern checkout which customers love to use. And building trust and security in what you're doing, I think, is really key. Those consumers that don't trust the checkout they see are much more likely to abandon or use a different channel that might be more expensive to yourself. Let's get into other ways that you can drive revenue from customers. In hospitality, we're seeing a really, really popular trend towards capturing more trip spend, both first party, that could be ancillaries that you can offer, all the way through to third party, kind of building your own marketplaces, potentially offering tours, activities, transfers, insurance, beyond your core stay. But what enables this? Well, one of the things that ResNexus and Stripe will be working on together is the rollout of a brand new modern terminal, which we'll talk about in a mo. But really, it's designed to help you think about not just pre-arrival upselling. We work with some partners that are saying, look, 7 to 10 days before someone's stay is the perfect time to offer a level of personalization, to offer a level of upsell, and to offer a level of helping them plan other purchases that they might have at their stay. They could either pay for that there and then with a payment link, or of course they could just potentially add it to their folio, to their invoice, and settle up when they're with you. But while they're on site, what we want to enable is a whole series of new contactless payment solutions so that they can quickly get on with their stay while also making purchases in restaurants, other spa or leisure activities, things like bike hire around the property. And then I think there's a huge opportunity for hoteliers to really lean into payment data as customer data, pulling it back into your CRM or your tools and thinking about, well, what are the kind of segments of customers, what are the groups of customers that will spend the most? How can I think about post-stay engagement, future guest experiences, offers to bring them back time and again? It's really interesting to see those customer groups that are spending more on property and how you might think about tailoring your marketing strategy. So, as I say, there's a new terminal coming called the S700, which is designed to be contactless. It's designed to be dual use. Your staff can use it as well to kind of manage inventory and take orders. But it's also something you can quite easily show to customers as well and show them the kinds of things they could do on property, the kind of opportunities and F&B they might buy. So it's a really lovely dual device for your staff and for customers that we'd love to explore with you. Other ways to take payment on site are obviously things like QR codes, sending payment links to their SMS or email. There's a whole host of ways that you can kind of put some of these ancillary offers in front of your customers. Okay, we're going to get into the kind of second half of the webinar. I think a little bit more now around keeping your business safe and managing chargebacks and regulations. So, what are some smart approaches to payment security? Well, firstly, I want to help you try and understand the different kinds of fraud that pop up in hospitality again and again. Then we'll chat through some of the common challenges, such as how you balance security and keeping yourself safe without getting in the way of the guest experience, whether that be the booking flow or their time with you on property. And then what are some of the best-in-class prevention strategies to really bring down fraud levels and make sure you are doing everything you can to minimize them? Well, what types of frauds are we seeing in hospitality? There's four main types. The first is card not present fraud. So this obviously is most common in online bookings. Fraudsters are typically using stolen card information to make their reservations. They may have a stay and then make a chargeback, but they also may cancel ahead of time for refunds. And you should watch if they're looking to have those refunds put in a different account. That's definitely a red flag. There's also identity theft. This is where criminals are using stolen personal information to book their rooms or services. And it can often lead to disputes with the legitimate card holder themselves, who obviously may still have the card and had no idea this was happening. Friendly fraud's a little bit different. This is legitimate customers who are disputing the charges after they've used your service. They'll often claim they didn't authorize the charge or the service wasn't as provided or wasn't as expected. And then finally is employee fraud. This is where your internal staff may be misusing customer payment information. They may be overcharging guests and pocketing the difference, or they may have found some creative ways to mean that money isn't reaching your accounts and your business. Why is hospitality particularly susceptible to this? Well, you've obviously got an important job to do of balancing the need for security with customer experience. Both in that booking funnel, it's about not creating so many barriers that a guest faces a huge amount of friction and would be better off in another booking channel. And while they're at property, of course, they want to enjoy their check-in experience, want to enjoy their time with you. It's also a high volume, fast nature business. And so the nature of constant bookings, constant arrivals mean obviously your team are overstretched and potentially ripe to make mistakes. We're also always dealing with international guests and a variety of payment methods. You may also be coordinating fraud prevention across multiple properties or even in one property across multiple business areas, from your front desk to your leisure facilities to your F&B. And of course, with the rise of AI or just the intelligence of the criminal masterminds, staying on top of some of these evolving fraud techniques can be complicated, and you've obviously got a business to run day to day. And five fraud prevention strategies we would always recommend in hospitality. One is, always most importantly, staying on top of friendly fraud, which is around 30% of all fraud that we see. And the key to this is really clear communication. And this is clear communication on the timings and amounts of charges that you're going to be making. It's providing customers with a detailed record of the charges, the receipts, the invoices. And it's also efficient dispute management here to reduce the chargebacks as well. Getting in front of those customers that you feel like have potentially had a negative stay or had been more challenging to work with, making sure that they don't get put in a position where they're going to make a dispute. Strategy two would be to really implement your strong customer authentication. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but actually just making sure there's a second factor authentication to the person booking does have the card, and ideally, when in person, you've seen the card as well without compromising on the user experience. Something again, I think for the future that ResNexus and Stripe are thinking about is helping you with more of a tokenization strategy to make sure that your stored payment information is slightly more anonymous and restricted to members of staff. Um, Number four is really enabling a real-time transaction monitoring. So actually providing you with the dashboards and the tools to quickly monitor and identify and of course respond to suspicious booking activity, including across properties or business areas. This, for example, could be someone who is hitting your business multiple times with different cards. Could be what we call penny testing, which is sending through kind of micro amounts. There could be a whole series of ways, but if you've got access in real time to dashboards, you can obviously monitor for unusual behavior. And then lastly is, this will increasingly stay complex, but really kind of use cutting edge fraud detection tools that are AI driven, customizing them with your own rules that's right for your business. So a statistic we love at Stripe is that we see just over 90% of credit cards in the world every year. And what that means is that our anti-fraud tools are relatively cutting edge in terms of knowing what's genuine, knowing what could be fraudulent. And so again, with our automated tools plus a level of customization that you might set yourself based on your own risk tolerance, you can actually make the best possible attempt at balancing fraud prevention with what you see as legitimate bookings. For example, you might compare them to email addresses you've seen before and think, actually, this is a new card that might be flagged as at risk, but actually I've seen bookings from this email that have been successfully stayed, and we know this customer well, and you might allow it to pass. So getting more into chargebacks a little bit, I think this is somewhere where we hear time and again hotels can be a little bit uncertain on how to manage it. So I wanted to walk through some common reasons for chargebacks in hospitality, some prevention strategies to stay on top of chargebacks, how the chargeback dispute process actually works and how to prepare effectively for it, and inevitably some advice on managing chargebacks when they inevitably do happen. So what are the common reasons for chargebacks in hospitality? Well, no surprise, at the top of the list is fraudulent transactions. This would be an unauthorized use of a stolen credit card. For example, a criminal out of the blue you've never seen before booking a luxury suite using a credit card that's not theirs. Number two would be service quality disputes. This is where they're just dissatisfied with the accommodation, the amenity, the stay that they had with you. A guest claiming the room wasn't as advertised, perhaps it lacked the promised view, wasn't quite the right size, something went wrong with the service. It could be something around billing or processing errors. Hotels that might make incorrect charges, duplicate billings, or have challenges giving back refunds. An example might be a guest accidentally being charged twice for their stay, potentially online or in person if you use slightly different systems for those. Number four would be reservation cancellation disputes. This is often a disagreement over the booking terms or the no-show policy. So very common, for example, is guests disputing their charge, claiming they did cancel within the allowed time frame. Was that 24 hours? Was it 7 days? And then lastly, technical communication issues. Actually, is there something on the website? Was there something in the policy wording? Or was it just a genuine misunderstanding? But a guest might well book, for example, a non-refundable rate, but claim that wasn't clear, that there wasn't going to be a refund available if they need to make any changes or cancel it. So again, chargebacks are more complicated in hospitality. We will see these time and again. We have no-show reservations, which you often don't get in many industries. This is guests just disputing charges for rooms that they never came to stay. Service quality disputes. There's a very subjective nature of a hospitality experience. Extended time frames, so chargebacks can occur, many months after the stay. Multiple touch points. They may have charges in the room. They may have in-room dining. They may have restaurants. They may have leisure. They may have ancillaries. They may have a whole range of different changes that they've made to their bill, which can just make it a little bit unclear what they were expecting to pay for. International guests, for example, language barriers, cultural difference in expectations of what was advertised versus what they received. And then, of course, seasonal fluctuations. We do see higher chargeback rates during peak seasons when obviously properties and staff are absolutely maxed out. But operators can take intentional steps to manage them. We recommend 6 clear steps. One is, I can't say it clearly enough, a clear communication of policies and charging, really thinking carefully about the wording of booking confirmations and your website, itemizing specific costs, terms and timings really does make a big difference in bringing down that friendly fraud figure. Transparent and timely charging practices. Charge them when you say you're going to charge them. Typically at the time of booking, we find works really well, or at checkout, or as per the cancellation policy. But communicate clearly and do what you say you're going to do. Implementing strong authentication methods. So think about something like 3D Secure on your online checkout for those online bookings. And maybe you think about ID checks online as well, or at least be doing those at check-in, and especially do those for your higher value stays. Number four is really just consistently providing excellent customer service. Make sure your team are on top of addressing guest complaints promptly. Give chances for feedback during their stay, and of course, offer fair resolution options as well. And that chance for feedback during the stay will provide evidence for you should disputes and chargebacks pop up, as we'll discuss in just a moment. Maintaining comprehensive documentation, so thinking about those detailed records of all of those transactions, communications, and the guest interactions that you have. And then lastly, training staff on fraud prevention and proper procedures. So just making sure your team are on top of recognizing some of those red flags and handling unusual situations. So how does the chargeback dispute set process even work, and how do you prepare effectively? Well, the first step is you'll have charged the cardholder. They then dispute that charge with their bank. And that's actually becoming easier and easier. Many banks now within the apps just have one click where they're able to quickly dispute and give a reason. So that naturally means we're seeing this more and more. At that point, the cardholder bank will pull their funds back from Stripe, and Stripe will recover the funds from yourselves, the merchant, and apply the dispute fee. We obviously let you know as quick as we can, and at that stage, the ball is really in your court. You can accept the dispute or choose to do nothing, or if you choose to challenge the dispute, this is the time at which you piece together evidence, kind of in your dashboard or through a third-party tool to really kind of make that case. We then push that evidence back to the cardholder's bank. That then is a review. I mean, this could take anything up to 75 days. And at that point, the bank decides, yeah, we're going to overturn the dispute, and it goes into the hands of the merchant, the charge is returned, or they actually uphold the dispute. At that point, you do have a chance to kind of go again and challenge that choice. You may have further evidence, you may have an additional kind of rationale that you want to put to them. A few key takeaways. One is make yourself, or make sure someone in your team is familiar with the specific processes of the major card networks that you work with. They are all a little bit different, and you'll kind of learn how they work. We do ask that you manage chargeback levels carefully. You want to avoid these card scheme dispute programs. If you become known for above average chargebacks, it can create challenges with you going on to accept certain card payments over time. Be aware of any international variations if you do serve a global customer base, and work closely with ResNexus plus Stripe, we can often provide guidance on network specific requirements. And of course, take it on yourself to stay informed about any regulatory changes that are coming that might affect some of these chargeback processes. So our advice on managing chargebacks when they happen, top five, one is respond promptly and do it within the deadlines. If you do plan to push back, taking a swift action definitely increases the chance of successful dispute resolution. Step two is all about gathering and organizing the right compelling evidence to make your case. And here you want to include booking details, records of check-in, and any other relevant communications with the guest. What's really nice is that ResNexus will actually support the compiling of key booking information. And then obviously combined with Stripe, we'll have all of the payment information, both online and in person with our terminal. So together, we should really be able to help you make a great case. Be clear and concise and address the specific dispute. It'll have a chargeback reason code. It may have some comments as well. So just make sure you are, really kind of making your case. Leverage technology to make it more efficient. Use chargeback management tools available, within your dashboards. If it's happening a lot, or you manage multiple properties, there are third parties available that can help you do this. And learn from each case to prevent future chargebacks. How can you analyze and document patterns and adjust your policies based on the insights you get from each dispute? Is it something in the way you're writing your cancellation policies? Is it something about the way you're gathering ID at check-in that just means this is more likely to happen? Are you not dealing with complaints while the guests are on property, for example? Okay, last section for me is really to around staying compliant. So, what are some of the other things going on that can help you, stay on top of payment regulations and ways that you need to be managing payment information and customer data? So, we're going to drive through a little bit of a section on something called PCI DSS and why it's important in hospitality. We're going to talk a little bit about how ResNexus and Stripe helps you stay on top of PCI. We're going to dive into strong customer authentication, and then we're going to finish up on GDPR, and then just a bit of a wrap around why ResNexus and Stripe working together should make things easier for you when you're thinking about compliance. So if you're not familiar, just a quick overview of PCI DSS. So effectively, about 20 years ago, the major card networks came together and formed a single set of standards around payments. So this is really affects kind of three different areas. If you're handling credit card data from customers, just making sure that's collected and transmitted securely. If you're storing any customer data, just making sure that that is encrypted and it's secure. And then just make sure over time you've got the right security controls in place around handling that. Now, PCI compliance, if you choose to go down the route of PCI compliance, you are in for a roller coaster. So hospitality businesses face a real complexity due to the nature of us having both online and in-person payments. And often they need to talk to each other because they're happening in the same day. So if your hospitality business handles card data directly, you want to get hold of those kind of raw credit card numbers, you may be required to meet each of these 300 different security controls that are required. There are nearly 2,000 pages of documentation on this you'd need to comply with, and that would take about 72 hours just to read. So it's quite the task. So how have ResNexus and Stripe come together to help you manage compliance? Well, crucially, we're partnering to allow you to enhance security and reduce some of these liabilities and really allow you to get on with the core job of providing excellent guest experiences. In practice, that means we provide hosted payment pages for your online checkout. That solution is provided by Stripe, and we actually extract any need at that stage for you to see those raw credit card details. They stay out of the flow of your own systems on Stripe. By using Stripe terminals, as we've discussed on property, then for all of your in-person payments at check-in, check-out, or hotel amenities, well, all that hardware and the software behind it is PCI compliant for secure transactions. We also like to help you reduce any unnecessary manual credit card data entry. So, replacing phone bookings with more of a secure online reservation if possible, rather than paper credit card forms at the front desk, using online payment links or digital authorization forms. But look, ResNexus can provide a service to help make sure you're PCI compliant and help you understand any level of PCI compliance and documentation you may need. So make sure you're reaching out to their account manager and kind of expecting that phone call. Behind the scenes, of course, make sure that you understand how secure staff access can help. Implement role-based access controls for payment systems, and use some of this tokenization to avoid those people who shouldn't be accessing raw credit card data. So moving on from PCI to what we call strong customer authentication. So this might be new to you. This is a European regulatory requirement. Adds an extra layer of security to online payments that are happening, and it's really important for hotels. Typically, it's requiring those guests booking with you to provide two forms of identification. So they might require, for example, a passport, password, and a fingerprint when making digital transactions, or it might require them to open up their banking app and just confirm that a payment's taken place. And that's aimed at reducing fraud and enhancing payment security. Now, ResNexus and Stripe are working together to try and balance that security with customer friction because we really want it to be as slick as possible so that those legitimate customers obviously are not put off by that process and can jump through those steps. As background, it affects European transactions. As US hotels, you'd need to comply when accepting payments from European guests. So it's just really important for any kind of hospitality business with a global mindset to be SCA ready to ensure it's got smooth transactions for customers wherever they're from. So again, step one is really around just implementing what we call 3D secure for online bookings. You may well have seen this yourselves, but after the initial credit card page, it's just making sure whether it's an SMS or opening up a banking app, that there's a second way to check that that customer is who they say they are. Stripe's put a lot of time and effort into making that as fast and as frictionless as possible. So it's just a couple of extra clicks for a customer to be able to make that authentication. We've also got some intelligence built to the back end of our system to, in certain situations, you can actually run exemptions. So, for example, on recurring transactions or lower risk payments, if you've seen the customer before, for example, we might be able to skip that process. And we've got built-in logic that'll keep their conversion rate at its absolute maximum as guests navigate your website and their stay. And of course, it's really important, once again, let staff and guests know about these SEA requirements. Do put it in your website copy, do explain what's going to happen, so that they understand, it's an extra fraud or security check. And if they're not familiar with it, you can always kind of talk them through it. Last piece we want to cover here is GDPR. Again, this is a European Union set of rules. It really sets out guidelines on how organizations collect, store, and use personal data of EU residents. And again, there have been some data leaks in the last kind of 6-7 years of large hotel chains, and this has resulted in fines for mismanagement. So we just wanted to make sure we talk you through it. If you're handling any data of an EU resident, this will apply to you. There are penalties if you don't get it right, but I think it's also an opportunity really to kind of win customer trust. I think customers feel really confident when traveling from the EU if hotels are on top of the way they're managing data and that they're messaging that clearly. And it can be a big part of driving guest satisfaction and loyalty. What are the compliance areas? Well, one is around consent and transparency in the way you collect and use data. Two is around data minimization, security measures. Three is around honoring guests' right if they ever want to access, correct, or have you delete their data. And then three is around breach detection. If something goes wrong, what are the rules on notification? So how do you comply? Look, I think it's definitely worth, if you think you might fall under GDPR and be handling guests from the EU, it's definitely worth one of the team spending time on a data audit and your privacy policies. They would be responsible for just making sure that the right technical measures like encryption are in place as guests are inputting data, whether that be customer data or payments. Making sure staff, again, more broadly, are trained and really kind of know that you have processes for data requests and what to do if it looks like there's a breach. It is something you're going to have to stay on top of periodically. So having those kind of regular reviews, staying on top of any changes, and just making sure, again, your staff training and security assessments are in place and up to date. When I ran a hospitality business, we had someone that, as part of their job, they're effectively our kind of chief data officer, and they just stayed on top of what we were doing from customer support and sales all the way through to groups and meetings to technology, just to make sure we had the right systems in place. Why does this matter for payments? Well, it's a repeat of some of the themes we've touched on, really. It's really important primarily that you're PCI and DSS compliant. Your payment process will have to adhere to some of these industry security standards around the data you see, and not seeing raw credit card data is a key part of that. Limit your payment data retention. Only store the payment information you need for the shortest possible time. And of course, if you're passing data around, it's about securing the transmission of that payment data, implementing end-to-end encryption for all payment transactions. The simplest way to do this is, of course, have it to run on one integrated system. So one thing that ResNexus and Stripe are spending a lot of time on is making sure that from online to in person, there's an integrated approach, so that, again, this is something that be removed from you. And that's a nice place to wrap up, really, is how the ResNexus and Stripe partnership has been built to simplify your compliance. Number one is PCI and DSS compliance is effectively taken care of. For almost every situation, we'll be handling all of the sensitive payment data, reducing your compliance scope. We've got pre-built compliant payment solutions that you can just take and use without any extra kind of compliance work on your end. And of course, we regularly update the systems behind the scenes to make sure we're staying well ahead of standards that otherwise could put you at risk. Needless to say, it's something we absolutely obsess about for our millions of customers around the world. It also ensures that you've got global regulatory adherence as well. Again, we were talking about a couple of regional requirements here. The international payment regulation space is really complicated. And if it looks like you're either going to be operating internationally or trying to draw in guests from international markets, we're going to try and keep you informed about relevant regulatory changes. But most importantly, we're going to be managing them for you to make sure you don't need to worry about some of those specific nuances. And then lastly, I think the partnership offers a range of integrated built-in security features as well. So, we're going to be rolling out kind of cutting edge fraud detection tools together. You'll have access to some of that chargeback and dispute management software. Behind the scenes, we're looking at how we can do tokenization to protect all your customer payment information and really making sure we're maintaining secure encrypted payment channels that, as I say, you and your staff don't need to be exposed to in a way that would it force you to take a load of kind of compliance steps that you otherwise wouldn't need to. So that brings us to the end of our webinar today, really. Hopefully, that's been a relatively useful walkthrough of how ResNexus and Stripe are partnering together to bring you a modern payment infrastructure and a series of payment options that can do everything from drive more growth through your website with some of these new payment methods to capture more in-trip spend and making sure you're maximizing kind of the personalization and spend of every guest that you see around some of these ancillaries and in-person payments with our new terminal. Keeping your business safe, so staying on top of some of the ways that people are thinking about payment security and fraud prevention, with specific deep dives there into chargebacks and disputes and how you manage those, and of course some of the regulations and compliance that you'll need to be aware of, but hopefully not take care of yourselves from the world of PCI, GDPR, and SCA. And I'll spare you from a few more acronyms you don't need to learn. It's been an absolute pleasure kind of discussing this with you today. We are incredibly excited for the ResNexus partnership and delighted to share more in the coming weeks and months. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much for that fantastic overview. I'm sure it felt in depth, but I'm sure you can go a lot more in depth on all these topics. But I think you had a lot of great and actionable things for our audience. So thank you so much, James, for that presentation. As I said at the top, we will get to a Q&A in just a moment. But before then, I just wanted to say that if you did enjoy this webinar, you can view this and all other ResNexus webinars on our website, resnexus.com, in the webinars section under education. And you can also register for upcoming webinars on that page. All right, and with that being said, I think we're going to go ahead and start taking questions. So go ahead and start putting them into the Q&A section, and we'll get those answered for you as fast as we can and in the order they appear. All right, so our first question to kick us off for today. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, we've also got Megan Mayfield on to help us out for the ResNexus side of the Q&A. She is a member of the ResNexus payments team, so she'll be able to help answer some of those ResNexus related questions. So our first question to kick us off for today is about the buy now, pay later option. Do you think you could elaborate a little bit more about how the property would get paid for that option and kind of more about how that works?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one, Gavin. Typically the way buy now, pay laters work is you as the property actually won't notice really any difference at all. Let's say it's Klarna, they will step in and the consumer will do a quick kind of credit agreement with them. They will then set up the payment plan for the customer, but you as the merchant, the hotelier, will get all of your funds kind of as normal. You may have a contract that may be set, at the time of check-in, it may be set at the time of checkout, it may be kind of at the time of payment, but you'll receive 100% of your funds, and you aren't taking on any of the risk of that credit, not being collected from the customer. That all sits on Klarna as well. So it's a really nice option for you to kind of add an installment program into your checkout, kind of without taking on any, processes around collection or any of the risks involved. We're finding it's a really growing popular choice, not just in hotels, but across the OTA space as well. So I think we'll see it more and more in hospitality.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that elaboration. Looks like we've got a couple of questions for Megan. The first one, this question is, does the Stripe in-person payments terminal work with ResNexus in Canada? And if so, which terminal should I get for that will work seamlessly?
Well, thank you. This presentation was great. We got to see the S700 presented by James, which is the terminal that we recommend for our Canadian merchants. And we are really excited to offer this terminal in Canada. This is the first time we've had a terminal there. So if you have been using a previous processor, then you will notice that you would have to run that charge on your credit card processing terminal and then take the extra step to enter it into the ResNexus system. But with this terminal being integrated seamlessly into ResNexus, you will not have to do that. You will be able to take that payment on the terminal. The information will go directly into ResNexus, so it alleviates that extra step of having to record transactions. So we're excited about that. We're also excited about the security it provides. We know a lot of our Canadian merchants have specifically asked for terminals for more secure payment options. So if you would like to have a terminal and are interested in this S700, please feel free to reach out to us and we can get you the pricing and shipping information and help you order that.
All right, perfect. All right, next one again for Megan. Is there the ability to pass on the credit card fee to the customers on checkout? And is there a way to discount customers for using debit cards?
Thank you. Okay, I'll start with the second question first, which is that we don't discount for using debit cards. The way we have our pricing structure is that it's a really simple flat rate. So the flat rate of 2.9% plus 30 cents per transaction if you're in the United States. And then we'll have other pricing options depending on your country. But for the United States, that is the very simple structure. So it's really great because you have a wide variety of cards. So a lot of people who are charged, huge amounts for commercial cards, things like that, it really helps to balance it out, makes it easy to understand exactly what you're paying and what your rates will be. If you're interested in the different rates for each country, once again, please feel free to contact us at ResNexus and I can get you the specific pricing that's related to the country that you're in. And then as far as passing on the credit card fee to customers at checkout, I can let you know that as far as our US-based customers, this is something that can be tricky because different states, even different counties in the United States, have different policies and government regulations on whether or not you can do what's called a surcharge and pass on those credit card processing fees. So in ResNexus, you can set up different fees that would effectively, if it's legal and you choose to proceed with that, you could set up a fee that would charge the card that additional fee when it is used for credit card processing. But once again, that would really depend on the area that you are in. I'm not sure if any of our other panelists have more experience internationally. I just mostly have experience with that in the United States.
Yeah, Megan, it's very similar internationally as well. It's really worth checking, by country. So generally, surcharging on debit cards and credit cards is not allowed. There's some exceptions like Australia where you can. So, if you have a lot of international guests and they're focused in a few different markets, you can use Stripe documentation if you like to check out the regulations. We have them all on our public docs, and then obviously use that functionality within ResNexus to surcharge where you can. But generally, unfortunately, it's not something that's allowed. And actually, it's a much wider topic of, dare I say it, what some people call kind of junk fees in hospitality, which is this idea of surcharges on the original booking. It's a very hot topic. I'm sure many of you will know about kind of resort fees and things. So generally, we would encourage people to bundle, as much as possible into your room rate.
All right, we got at least one more for Megan, but I'm going to give you a little bit of a break because I actually wanted to sort of segue into a question that we had. James and Anna, what are some of the kind of features that you're most excited about potentially in the future with the ResNexus and Stripe connection? I know we've got some things on the horizon. Just curious your take on some of those things.
Yeah, definitely happy to take this one. Hi, everyone. My name's Anna Walsh. I am the partnership lead for ResNexus here at Stripe. One of the things we're really excited about, in addition to the S700 terminal that we presented and James presented on today, is eventually enabling your customers to actually accept payments just via a cell phone, so a smartphone, whether that be an Android or an iPhone. And so that's something we're actively thinking about building. And if that's interesting to you, definitely please share your feedback with the ResNexus team. And I would say, there's a lot of other areas that we're looking to grow, but that's an area that I'm most excited about. I don't know, James, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, look, it's the start of a really exciting partnership, and I came to payments from hospitality, but the world never seems to stop. I think, I think we've talked a little bit about paying in installments. I think as household budgets are stretched, it's a really great way for customers to treat themselves to holidays without kind of affecting their budget. I think that's a really exciting thing we should do next year. I'm also seeing a big trend around just kind of paying by bank in general, for bigger purchases and longer stays. We've launched a product in the US that customers like Airbnb and Uber are using now. We're definitely chatting through the ResNexus, where it's almost as simple and frictionless as putting in a credit card. Putting in your bank details, saving them once, using them again and again throughout your stay. And I think that again, while hotels are really sensitive to cost, having that kind of option you check out as well, I think can be a really nice way to try and kind of keep some of those banking costs under control while offering a way that's quite popular with customers.
Yeah, and just to add to that really quickly, the other key thing I'm super excited about are the local payment methods that ResNexus Payments will be offering through the connection with Stripe. So, we talked about today some of those international payment methods in Europe. Right now, the offering is for cards and in the US, ACH debit, but the ResNexus team is working quickly to offer other local payment methods internationally, and that's something that will be available in that next couple months, and really excited about that.
Yeah, that's great. All right, returning back to questions from Megan. Here's another question. It is, I'm using ResNexus to also handle the charge cards. I would love to have Stripe and get a physical device so the guests can do touchless. Can I switch? And how can I add Google or Apple Pay as our guests do ask for it?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if you're currently processing with a different processor through ResNexus, one thing that we absolutely can help you switch over to Stripe. One thing I would suggest is contacting your current processor to see if you're under any type of contract. Some of them do have a time frame of contracts, but if you're interested in switching over, you can contact our payments team. We'll be happy to take you through the application process and get you switched over. We can also help you order those new terminals that you can use for that contactless check-in. And as far as Apple Pay and Google Pay, I know that depending on the country you're in, we have that available. And for those countries we don't have it available, like was said, we're working rapidly to get that implemented.
All right, fantastic. Here's another question. This one goes in a little bit into maybe in detail, asking some specific questions about chargebacks.
Mhm.
Specifically, they brought up how they don't come into contact with their guests, but they have some situations where guests did come and stay, and they know they stayed, but they disputed charges. So, James, I'm wondering if you can go over a little bit more about how to handle those kinds of situations for those chargebacks.
Yeah, I was just looking at this question, Gavin. I don't know, but I expect this is something around kind of vacation rental or homestay, and exactly the business I used to run, where, like you say, often people are checking in with a keypad or a key lock box, and you may never see them. It can be a really tricky one. I think it's actually touched on in the next question as well. I think a couple of things I'd recommend. If you can do something like one of those kind of video doorbells just to kind of confirm someone's arrived. That's often a nice way in terms of the guest experience, and also then you obviously have a recording of it. But I'd also look at whether there is a kind of SMS or email service of just kind of confirming everything's okay with the stay. And obviously, if they've kind of clicked, yes, then that's another great piece of evidence. If they have done a chargeback, that's really unfortunate. I think I'd go into the kind of chargeback management dashboard, and I just take a look at the kind of what types of evidence you're looking at, because it may well be you've got the right kind of guest communication evidence that you need to dispute it. So go ahead and make those disputes, and I think going through that process, you'll really get to understand, are there specific communications, interactions, pieces of evidence that will be most useful. It's definitely not an easy one. It's just incredibly frustrating as an operator when these things happen, but I think, yeah, refining that messaging, maybe having something kind of add entry, will hopefully reduce that. We've seen people move from kind of a manual key lock box to actually more of a digital one that changes each time, so you actually know if the guest has picked up the key, for example. Small tweaks like that, not directly related to the chargeback, but just related to kind of the evidence piece, may well help.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Just have more ways to gather that evidence. That's smart. All right, we've got a question about is Stripe replacing Zift? Basically, if is Stripe replacing the Zift pay platform that we use now? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'd love to address that question. So it is not replacing, but it's adding to. And what we love to do at ResNexus is provide you with a multitude of options. So we want to do what's best for your business. So adding Stripe in is adding another partner that we feel will really enhance some businesses and be just a great partnership, a great option. So it's not going to replace Zift. If you have a Zift account, you can still use that. We also will still be partnering with the other gateways that we have. But Stripe is an additional option that if you're looking for some of the different things that they offer with the security and the terminals and different payment methods, then Stripe might be a great option for you. And we have found that with onboarding with Stripe, it has been very quick, very painless, very easy. So we've enjoyed the onboarding process. It's also been really great because those of you who already have a Stripe account have been able to go in and just connect that Stripe account to ResNexus. So we've had people switching over new accounts who they have a Stripe account, they love it, they want to keep it. And so we're excited to be able to allow them to keep that and just connect it to ResNexus for that seamless processing.
Yeah, and then just one more thing to piggyback off of that. Another reason we wanted to integrate with Stripe specifically is also to help provide more international payment options. But yeah, exactly what Megan said. All right, that's great. And then our last question we have so far is less of a question and more of, I guess, I suppose praise. They just say, we switched to Stripe Monday, easy process, no problem so far.
It's great
Thank you
news.
for, yeah, that's great news. I wanted to say thank you for sharing that feedback. Part of the partnership between Stripe and ResNexus that we both really aligned on is that we always put our customers first. And so it's really great to hear that the onboarding was seamless for you. And we look forward to many more folks onboarding.
All right, and it looks like we've come to the end of our questions for today. I thought that was a great webinar. Thanks everyone for attending and for your engagement. Thanks so much to James and Anna from Stripe for coming on to put this on for us. They did an excellent job. And if there are no other questions, I think we're just going to go ahead and sign off for today. So thanks everybody so much, and I hope you all have a great rest of your week.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Bye bye.